All right, welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So this is kind of one of these episodes that like this guy that's in front of us right now is not only kind of like a friend, a business partner, like all these different things, but I had the opportunity to meet him live in person before I actually interviewed him, which is really doesn't really happen. Usually I'll interview somebody, some time will go by, and then we'll meet in person, but I met him before I interviewed him. So I think that in case kind of speaks volumes. And obviously his name is Cameron, but in our show, in our case, we're going to name him the book chess boss for obvious reasons. And we're going to break that down because this dude is complex. If you guys think that I'm a mad scientist and I hear voices and I'm complex, you're about to see a whole nother variation of craziness coming down the pipeline right now. So the show and the floor is yours, Cameron. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
Man, SA1, thank you. I want to say thank you for having me here today. Thank you for scooping me up from the middle of the Atlanta airport. I didn't know where I was. That airport is huge. And thank you for showing me some Southern hospitality. We got some breakfast and got to hang out before I was down there for the Black is Tech conference. And for me, that was a huge step. For those that don't know, it was the Black is Tech conference. It was in its fifth year this year. And it brings together Black people from all across the tech ecosystem, talking people from people who are founding their own companies to people who are working deep in the depths of Microsoft Azure. It was really cool to see and be around a bunch of talk about mad scientists and people who are doing the work. So that is what brought me down to Atlanta and how I got to meet you. But really, it's kind of I believe everything happens for a reason. And when I started to work with authors and get into the automated side of book marketing, I wish I had known you earlier on. We might have been co-founders on this, but I'm open, man. I am excited to talk to you about entrepreneurship, automation, AI, launching books, and also just how we got here, because there are not a lot of people. Even it was great to be in Atlanta for the conference, but the rooms still weren't packed with people who are actually founders. There were a lot of people there who are representative of large corporations, which is great. We need people on that side too. But another thing that I want to make sure that we talk about today is the passion economy. And I think we talked about this a little bit at breakfast, but in a world, SA, where anything that can be automated or outsourced can be and will be,
Facts.
our passions are our greatest asset. And so it's very exciting and interesting to be at the cutting edge of AI and automation as it relates to turning our passions, which I know you're really big on too. How do you live in your passions? I know we share passions for food, chess, and a lot of other things too. But how do you actually live in your passions on a day-to-day basis? That is my passion. My passion is passion and helping other people move in what they love to do and who they really are. And there's never been a better time to do it. So let's get down to it. What you got for me?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a lot of onions to unpack, and like I think you're really living up to the name of being a mad scientist. And again, I think I want to start with like one of your earlier passions, and it kind of goes to food, right? I remember seeing a picture, I think it was on your Instagram or your TikTok, and you were like making love to an instant pot. You were hugging it, like kissing an instant pot. So I want to really kind of like before we even get into the books, before we even get into the software, like where does food kind of play into your ecosystem of who you are?
Man, that's a great question. So legend has it that my first words were burger fries in that order. So whenever I go to a new city, if it's lunchtime, I love to find where the burgers are. Where do the chefs, I love to I'll go to the fanciest restaurant and get the burger, but I'll also figure out where the chefs eat when they get off work or before their shift. And that's where I want to go find a burger. So I've always loved food, being around it. And then the cook of my family was my grandmother. Being in the kitchen with her, watching her, I learned my understanding of love through food through her. So that was that was where the seed was planted, but it really it's been a huge part of my life, you know. And I was a football player growing up, so I love to eat, and my guys and I would go to this restaurant across the street from our high school. It's actually pretty well known. It's called the Nook. They've been on Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives, and a couple other Food Network shows, been featured around the Twin Cities. So Twin Cities famous. But they have some amazing fries, and like we were super broke, but we would go to after practice, we would go to the Nook and we would split the bigger fry. I remember it was $5.95, but it was this huge basket of fries, mind you. So like two of my guys were D1 linemen, so that, you know, was still not enough food, but it was like just enough snack for us to make it home after practice. But the full circle on that was when I graduated from Howard and I moved back to the Twin Cities. I went back to that same restaurant and they became my first client. So my understanding of food and my love for food transformed the trajectory of my career. And well, there is one other, I guess I had one other foray into the food world before that. So when I was at Howard, I ran for student body president, and I ran twice and I lost both times. And the second time I had put my all into it. I had spent all my money, all my energy, and hadn't gone to class. So once I lost that election, it was kind of like, well, I could either flunk out or I can drop out and come back next semester and try again. So that's what I did. I dropped out, pulled out of Howard for the rest of the semester, and I got a job. I started working at a bike shop downtown DC, and I hated it. So that I didn't last too long there. But there were certain things about it that I did. You know, it was my first time kind of just being out here on my own, not in school. I didn't really have a thing. So I knew that wasn't for me. But I did like making some money, not working too many hours, but I was like, okay, I gotta move on. So I worked at a restaurant, and then from there, it was Vapiano up on in Chinatown in DC. And I loved making the pizzas and getting there early, being with all the other cooks in the kitchen. But then you also had to ring up the people as you were making the pizzas. So I would see how much I would ring through on my register. And then there were like 6 registers during the lunch rush. I'm like, nah, I just like swiped through like 2 bands, like right in the last couple of hours. And then my check was like, it was missing some zeros, to say the least. So I quit that. And from there, I started my own illegal catering and speakeasy operation. So it was called Taji's Underground. But that was my real introduction to entrepreneurship. And obviously with my love, I used my love for food. And what I noticed around DC was that there weren't a lot of just good grease in the bag restaurants. And especially at that time, you know, there were what are they called? Oh man, not corner stores. Oh, I'm blanking on it. Carryouts, carryouts. So there, you know, there's the famous one right next to Drew Hall, Howard China. But other than that, like if you want just like a burger, like a Midwest fries burger, you couldn't find it. So I saw an opportunity and I started legally selling burgers in the barbershops, the admin building. And by lunchtime, I had enough money to buy some weed, buy some beer, and do it all again the next day. And I was like, wow, this is great. Like this is living. But once I started to get more legit into food and I realized, 1, how much work it is, and 2, how much overhead it takes to really get into it legitimately, I transitioned into food marketing. And that is where when I moved back to the Twin Cities, that's how I got into working with the Nook and doing video marketing with local restaurants. So that was right when video was starting to take off, and you know, Mark Zuck and them were really pushing video. If you made a decent quality video, it was going to get some views, you know, and especially if they had, you know, a few thousand likes on their page. So it was a great time to get into organic video marketing. So man, my love for food and video marketing and really just digital marketing as a broader topic, they go way back and they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. And I think the other thing that kind of goes into it, and you kind of do it naturally, is branding. I mean, I've seen several of your posts in the food categories, like you kind of nicknamed yourself Smash Daddy, and you was like, "Yo, the daddy's back," and then he was kind of the tagline amateur chef. And if you even had like a brand of like ribs, I think it was called the Christmas ribs, and they were paired with three separate sauces. So like I'm also streaming this in the food group as well too. So I want you to kind of just like talk about like the chemistry of like the transition from food into the marketing, because marketing is really what we're talking about, but obviously the food was kind of like the flaming torch to kind of get you up and running.
Well, actually, the flaming torch, I got to say, there was one other thing. It was Barack Obama. So why I went to DC, and what I really wanted to learn was how Barack became president in 2008. So that the campaign he ran in 2008, inauguration in 2009, was what really lit the spark. And I didn't understand that a lot of what I loved about it was not the politics, was not the electoral college. It was the digital marketing, and it was the digital campaigning. So really my degree and my research at Howard was in political science, but my focus was on digital campaigning. Now, the transition from there to food was, I was tired of losing. I was tired of trying to get people to vote for me. And it was so much easier to share a meal with people and get people to buy into good food rather than my politics. So I kind of made the transition from selling ideas to selling French fries, but those French fries are the best way, it's a gateway drug to ideas. So I learned that, food is a medium, but marketing is marketing. And when you understand the principles of that, it's simple to make the transition from industry to industry and vertical to vertical. But for food, it's one of those. It's very similar to the work that we do with authors now. A lot of chefs, a lot of restaurant owners are very passionate about what they do. What they do is not marketing. What they do is not necessarily putting butts in the seats, and they think, oh, if I make this amazing special today, or if I make this, whatever, my food is amazing. People are going to come and they're going to buy it. Or the same thing with software, books, and if you're not a person who loves marketing and understands the science of how to find your target audience and then convert them into people who are actually buying things from you, then it can be very disheartening. But I loved both of those worlds, and I loved being able to help chefs, restaurant owners, and because those are the people that made my city, the Twin Cities, better. Those were my favorite parts of the city. So to be able to help them stay in business and thrive is actually like really selfish, because I want to be able to go to places like that.
So like, let's just add a little bit of the chemistry and make you a little bit more of a mad scientist. While you were at Howard, you also decided to get into drop shipping as well. And you had like this little crazy store that had like all these random knickknacks. And so I want you to kind of talk about, like, obviously you got food going on, you're in college, and then you decided to start doing drop shipping. Like, where did that come from? And like, what were you drop shipping?
Great question. So once I got back into Howard, I don't remember exactly what the very first website. I did have a little bit of an introduction to building websites from my campaign website. I actually paid a guy who's now a good friend and an advisor for Book Blaster. Actually, his name's Abdul. But I paid him like $200 to build my website, and honestly, it was crappy. But it was what it was. I didn't really know any better. I didn't know what made a good website. But we lost anyway, so it didn't really matter. But the transition into digital, I actually picked up a camera as well and started getting into. It was a Nikon D90, so it's old even then. But I got into photography and visual storytelling, and I kind of just segued into some basic web design. And I got started with Weebly. And so from Weebly, it was kind of like, okay, like this is cool. I can do some things. Like once I got hooked on the idea of the ideas in my head could really come to life, because I've always had great ideas, but the ability to actually execute and have the right tools that were robust enough to, but also, that could move, I could learn them at the speed of my ideas. This was my first foray into no code, low code tools. So Ashiki Shop was my drop shipping company, or really a brand. It wasn't really a company, but it was a drop shipping platform that I built. And I didn't really even understand that I was drop shipping. I just had an idea that there was this shop in Adams Morgan called Bazaar Al Atlas. And shout out to my guy, Zach, and it's still there at Adams Morgan. You can go and get some rugs, pipes, like all this like really cool, beautiful imported stuff. But if you look on my Instagram or my TikTok somewhere, there's a video of me walking through there and telling the story. But it's still wall-to-wall stuff. Like you can't find anything. If you spent all day in there, you would still be looking for, whatever that is you're looking for. Now, my idea was, well, and then here's the other kicker. Everything in the shop was 50% off. And it was just like, okay, well, that's my margin right there. If I can sell whatever he's got right here and just sell at the listed price online, I don't even have to buy it right now. I can just come back here to Adams Morgan, hop on my little bike and come by and then run across the street to the post office and put it in the mail. So I didn't understand that was called drop shipping. I was just like, oh, like I want to have an e-commerce store. I don't have any money for inventory. Like it just kind of like clicked for me. And then once I started learning the terminology and learning, oh, this is a thing. And oh, like there are people that are providers for drop shipping companies. Like this is great. So I started to really think about a framework for the passion economy. So one of the 4 business models was drop shipping. The other 3, let's see how well I can do, are the affiliate model, the directory model, and the subscription model. So actually the subscription model is something that I've kind of like added later on, but really the idea was how can I, if I have zero money, if all I have is passion, how can I get started with right away? And so those are 4 business models that you can launch with very low overhead. So that was my introduction. It was an accident at first, but once I understood that it was a thing, I went all in on it.
So, and again, I'm just layering up so people could really understand like why I'm really calling you a mad scientist, because there's so many different layers to who you are. So I then you want to go into like the other, like you have like a pretty recent side hustle, which is more so like an experiment to kind of test things out and kind of teach people on how you're doing, why you're doing, and what you're doing. And that's the power washing. Like you was talking about renting a power wash and then actually renting it out to someone. So I want you to kind of talk about that and kind of how does that fill into where you are right now?
Definitely. I'm really passionate about median businesses, and what that is, it's something completely made up. And when you drive through any town in America and you look in the median, you'll see something being advertised. And in Bowie, where I am now, it's pressure washing. Every, few miles, you'll see some handmade, like somebody's running for president of the pressure washing. I don't know, but the signs are very low budget. It's a very simple strategy. You put a yard sign in next to a stop sign. But the reason why people do it is because in general it works. And I mean, the other side of it is that they don't know something better. But in general, the demand, when you have a median business, it's because the demand in that area is so good that if you slap a number on the side of a pickup truck, it's good enough to actually work. Because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense for you to do all of that. So Jacksonville, the median business is lawn care, because if you've ever been down there, it rains every day for like 3 hours, and then the sun comes out hot as hell, and the grass grows like the rainforest. So the median business down in Jacksonville is lawn care. So the idea here is, okay, as a marketer, as someone who really enjoys digital marketing, I can go into any town and I can build a small microsite around those median businesses, around those niches. So I bought BowiePowerWashing.com a couple of years ago, and I've just been sitting on it. But the idea here is, okay, if I can rank Bowie Power Washing and get leads coming in, then it's essentially a piece of digital real estate that I can rent out and just have residual income. And the best part of that is once you have a methodology that works in a particular niche, it's very easy to rinse and repeat across different niches and geographic regions. The problem is for the first time, I've been working on focusing and as Jonathan Mentor would say, guarding my focus, because I love to come up with new ideas and I love to, side hustles used to be my, what I used to do full time. And I didn't really understand that I wasn't making the progress that I wanted to because my focus was too scattered all over the place. So I try to work on buoy power washing and some other side projects just once a week to keep my focus on Book Blaster. But it's a huge opportunity. And when I work with students and people ask me, what would you do? How would you get into something? I just want to make money. Man, if you just want to make money, just do some work. And the best part is the people that are already doing that work with the specialized equipment, when you talk about, pressure washing is not that specialized equipment, but it is. I don't know anything about it really. But I do know how to get leads. I do know that when you sign up for something like Angie's List or, take your pick, Thumbtack, they're charging an arm and a leg, and you're also competing. They all have different terms, and I don't want to go too far into the weeds on that. But it sucks, and it sucks because at the end of the day, you're paying because you don't know how to market. So there are huge opportunities. There are huge opportunities, especially now with AI and automation, to build niche microsites and then rent those out and build a digital. I know you're big on empire, so if you want to build like an empire of local lawn care sites, now is the best time to do it. And all you got to do is rank better than people who think marketing is slapping a phone number on a truck.
So, and I want you to kind of take some time travel into this equation, right? So we're talking about being outside of the normal, right? Again, just by you explaining what you just talked about, the listener could obviously hear that you don't think like the average individual. You kind of think out the box. And I'm kind of thinking that kind of stems from your mom. So I want to talk about her for a minute. I mean, she is a genius in her own right, right? She's a doctor of math. I've never really met a doctor of mathematics before, but she has a damn doctorate in that. So I want you to kind of talk about how has growing up with your mom and her being so dedicated to education and math has rolled into who you are today.
That's a great question. And in particular, my mom is a professor of mathematics education. So yes, she does teach math, and she actually, up until last year, she just retired after a long time in the classroom. She also teaches teachers how to teach math. So she is a professor in the grad program at the University of Minnesota. And when other teachers are either going for their master's or their PhD in mathematics education, and also what she focuses on is how to use math as a tool for social justice in urban classrooms. And something I didn't understand, I used to always read books about Dr. King and Malcolm X and people who I thought were civil rights heroes, and they are, don't get me wrong. But I didn't realize that my mom was her own version of a Malcolm X. She's the Malcolm X of math in a lot of ways, and mathematics education, because when you are afraid of math, you're literally afraid of light and shadows and your relationship with the world. And if you are afraid of your own relationship with the world, then it's very hard for you to make your own path through it. So it's much deeper. I realize I used to just hate math and not really care too much about it, but so much of what I do now is 100% math. And I have, my mom's my hero. So I have the utmost respect for the work that she's done, but also how she raised me. Looking back on it, she never tried to push me in one direction or another. Now, she always pushed me to be my best, whatever that looked like. But she never said, well, going to college wasn't really optional, but I never didn't want to go to college, especially growing up on college campuses with my mom sitting in the back of her classes. I've always loved campuses. Like I to this day, I love to just go and be on random campuses, sit and go be in the bookstore and just be around students and be around that energy. I love campuses, and especially this time of year in the fall, and the marching bands and it's the best. And I definitely get that from her. And even though my father wasn't in my life, I do get a lot from him. So my father is a quarterback coach. And when I think about myself now, and I really think about my personality and what drives my success, my failures, what stresses me out, what I love, I do have a lot of him in me, even though I've only met him a few times. So I do see the football coach and the math professor in me when I do my work, when I speak to students, when I work with clients. There's a little bit of both. And then of course, my own experiences growing up in Minnesota, and then going out to Howard, and now being a software developer, I have my own perspective as well. So it's all of the above, but it definitely is in huge part because of the influence and the love of my mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously, your mom, I read one of her posts, and she was saying that after 40 years of teaching, she finally had opportunity to create her first book. And the name of that book is 1, 2, 3, Look at Me. So I want to know, did you have your hands in that? I mean, obviously, we're talking about your platform. Your platform is a book marketing platform. Did you actually help your mom jumpstart her book writing career?
So one small adjustment is 1, 2, 3 looks like me, but yes, my mom has always wanted to write a book, so that was definitely her. But once I published my first book and actually second book, the second book was a children's activity book, and most people don't know that I don't know if it's ghostwritten, but
it's a chess book, right?
the ABCs of chess. So that was the book for me that I was like, oh yeah, kids books are the jam. And like I'm actually like even more stoked about it now because I was working on that concept before AI. And the hardest part about that book essay was like just trying to figure out, okay, A is for attack, B is for bishop, and like just trying to make it make sense. But now like iterating through books like that, and every child needs to learn how to write at some point. So it's a great way to, when you talk about your passions, to combine your passion, chess, with handwriting. It's like, I don't really care if it ever really takes off, but I also wanted to have a book for my nephews that are still, they're growing out of it now. Well, there's some new ones now, I guess, too, but they're still, working on their letters. But the important thing here is as they're working on their letters, I want them to be thinking about and learning some things about the bigger world of chess. So with my mom, I knew that she was retiring. She had retirement coming up, but I also was inspired because, okay, yeah, I just did an activity book. No big deal. The children's book is like a hop, skip, and a jump over. And I was so wrong. It was a terrible experience. Like the first few months of like trying to find an illustrator, and we worked on Fiverr, and I have some like horrific renderings I can show you where it was like we started sketches and like we'd be getting close, and it would just take this weird, terrible left turn. It's like, whoa, what are these teeth, brother? Like, what's going on here? So it was a rough experience. And then, my mom is my mom and not I owe her lots of background. So, it's not it was a duty of love. And I could it's not great to be in the middle of an illustrator who's not that talented and your mom or any client, but I would just say, you know, being the middle person is not great. And it was different for me, different than a puzzle book, different than my first nonfiction book, because the illustrations were really what makes or breaks the book. But this was before AI was, you know, really anything. So I'm so interested now in coming back to the children's world. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus from that space, but there is so much opportunity to alleviate the very problem that kind of turned me off. Because besides that, I love children's books. I love the ability to use a children's book to package your passion and literally pass it on to particularly kids, and to get into schools and to start conversations in a meaningful way, in a way that you know, denser nonfiction books can't really do. So when you have that children's book, it can start conversations with people of all ages. So it's a great opportunity. It is not easy, and just because, you know, children's books are shorter, it is, do not be confused that it is easier. I would actually say that if you're interested in your first, and in self-publishing your first book, I would say, particularly if you have something already to collect your ideas, like a blog, podcast, I would just look at converting what you already have into a simple collection, blah, blah, blah. Like, and then getting your feet wet with the self-publishing side, because there's a lot to learn there. But man, honey, working with illustrators, the children's book, that is a not for the faint of heart. But yes, long story short, I did have a hand in it, and we will be coming out with more children's books. But that was a fun project.
So, I mean, this entire episode so far, like we've been layering up the buildup, like all this different positive things that have happened to you. But, you know, anyone that understands life and understands entrepreneurs and understands business, for every high, there's a low, right? So I want to kind of go into the low a little bit and kind of talk about like how you solve those lows. So, you know, you were saying that, you know, when you were younger, a teenager, you were a victim of abuse, you got bullied, taunting, and then you know you got into alcoholism a little bit. So I want you to kind of talk about that, and then like what helped you. And I already know the answer, but for the listener, I want them to kind of hear how you went from being in that dark place and using something positive to kind of come out of it, and you still use it till this day.
That's a great question. So when I was in high school, I was abused by a teacher, and it became national news, global news, really. And so when I was looking at where I wanted to go to school, I wanted to get far away from Minnesota. I wanted to be away from white people, frankly. And I wanted to study politics. So I was looking through the map, and I didn't apply to it. I only applied, I think I finished like half the application for University of Chicago, and I applied to Howard. So if I didn't get in, I don't know what I was going to do, but I got in, and you know the rest is history. But when I was deciding on a school, it kind of decided itself, because you know from 16 I was running, and I couldn't wait to get up out of Minnesota. I threw myself, you know, the first time I actually got pretty good grades and made the honor roll was my freshman year of Howard, because all I did was go to class, write poetry, and drink. And class was actually pretty easy and interesting too. I had some classes that I really liked, but I didn't party. I just drank. So I didn't get caught up in, you know, being out late. I'd go to bed early and wake up early, but you know, and I'd go to some parties, don't get me wrong, but like for the most part, I kept to myself. And I was in a very dark place. I didn't necessarily feel sad, but it was dark, and I didn't realize how deep I was buried in the ground and buried within myself. So as I look back on it now, a lot of those years felt on autopilot, and I was just kind of going with the motions. And even when I was running for student body president, I was looking for somebody to say, you know what, you matter. And what happened to you happened to you. You didn't do something, you're not a bad person. And when I looked at, how Barack Obama was both respected and vilified, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be president of the United States. Why? Because if I'm president of the United States, nobody can say anything. Yeah, and Barack found out that that's not true, and so did I. That's not really how racism works. That's not how victim blaming works, and I didn't understand all the complicated things that I had gone through. So I was really just putting my head down, trying to detach as much as possible. But when I was present, it was searching for validation from the outside. So then what changed it, really, it was hitting rock bottom, and it was in different forms. When I moved back to the Twin Cities, started working with restaurants. I caught a big break when I started working with Justin Sutherland, who was on Top Chef, season 16 of Top Chef. So from there, now I'm working with other Top Chefs and some of the top brands in not just the Twin Cities, in the country: Mountain Dew, Target, MLS. I'm in the penthouse of every stadium. It was nuts. It was nuts. But as being a part of that world, it was pretty fast paced, and a lot, there's a big problem in the hospitality industry with drug and alcohol abuse. And how do you say good job after a huge event, and everybody, all the chefs and everybody, and I'm kind of honorary member, you pass out the whiskey. You do some coke. Not saying that all of the chefs did it, but it's a big part of the culture. And I've lost more than one friend from the industry because it's part of the culture to suffer in silence or suffer with a smile because we're drinking up. So it got a lot worse before it got better, because it got to a place where one, it's easy to not feel bad about drinking 1942 on a rooftop with people who own a diamond mine. And it's just like, oh yeah, like whatever. But then I would drive home. And the fact that I never got pulled over, the fact that I never got into a serious accident, was really only by the grace of God. So those were a lot of those times I feel like it was just begging for something really bad to happen, because I'm not talking like a couple shots. I'm talking blackout. How did I get home? I don't know, let me take these keys out of the car. Fucked up. So it was more than just dabbling in alcoholism. I took it to the extreme. I tend to, if I'm gonna try something, I'm gonna be good at it, right? So yeah. Alcohol was I'm not gonna lose. No, but alcohol was no different. And I still to this day struggle with balance. For 2 years I didn't drink at all. Now I try and practice moderation, and I work to be the one in control and not the other way around. But it's a constant challenge, like I wanted to go ahead.
I think you just said something that's really important, and it's a really good segue to how you converted this into a positive. I mean, in chess is essentially 100% about controlling the 64 squares and dominating the center. And again, I want you to kind of think about it from that perspective, because again, you switched the alcohol out for an addiction to chess to a certain extent. You started teaching people chess. You started going to parks, playing chess. You became completely consumed by chess. So I want you to talk about how did chess become the substitute for the liquor, and then how does chess then lead into where you are today?
Definitely. So when I first was trying to um, find what sobriety could mean for me, I was looking for anything to distract me, and just like days seemed so long, and it was just like, ugh, like I gotta like my anxiety was like I just needed like I maybe I would have like done okay with fidget spinners or something, but like there's also something like a restlessness in my mind that once I started playing chess online, I was like, oh, and I wouldn't even realize it, but like my mind would go quiet, and it would be sometimes, for hours that I would be playing. And it's like, oh wow, this is really great. So what I realized is that when I would have, moments of anxiety or feeling like, oh, like this is it, and I would normally start drinking whenever. This is a situation where I would drink, I would, pull out my phone for a quick bump of chess, essentially, and quick blitz game or whatever else. And I was really bad. Like I was really, really bad, but like there was something about being able to win a game. And with chess, there's no luck. You have to be able to win every single move all the way to the end of the game. And that rush of checkmate was like, okay, I don't drink, but this feels good. And I like the way this is. And the other thing that was really hard for me was when I went out with people, I hated like talking to people. And a lot of times it's because I didn't really have interesting conversations with people. And that was in part because of not great conversation skills. But otherwise, my mind is always moving very quickly. And unless I'm around other people who think like me, it can be kind of like, blah, what are we talking about? So with chess, it was an opportunity. It was like, oh, we don't have to talk. We can just play. And I can see the way you think. And we don't necessarily like, please actually don't talk. Let's just play. And that like so much of drinking I realized was, oh, I'm in a social situation, but like, what do I do with my hands? Like, what do I do with my, so realizing that I just needed other things to be able to gather around. But then once I kind of got over that, I was like, oh, like I like doing other things where drinking isn't the center of the focus, but chess was something where it just made it very easy because I don't have to talk to nobody. And in fact, it's, socially smiled upon to not talk. So that is, to be honest, one of the things that I think just now I'm realizing was a big part of even like, I think about photography. I would go to parties and events, and I just hated talking to people. So photography was an opportunity for me to be like, oh, I see something over there, I gotta take a picture of. I gotta go. Like it would be like, I don't want to talk. And it's interesting because put me on a stage, give me a PowerPoint, and I love to speak in that regard, but like small talk, events like that. And actually, and think about the influence of my mom. I used to hate going to, I call them little sandwich parties. And university culture, academia, especially in Minnesota, is notorious for them. You got to go and like, just like, who are these people? Like, I mean, some of the food was a little bit good though, I'm not gonna lie. But like, who like, and then you have to like pretend to care and just like, can't stand it. So that is something where little sandwich culture is it drives me crazy. I'd much rather be back in the lab working on something than small talking and rubbing elbows.
So collectively, like this, like I mean, obviously we talked about a lot of different things to kind of build up who you are and build a platform that you have right now, which is Book Blaster. But I want you to kind of think about a time, if you can go back to any time, right? I mean, like time is not like it's your best friend. You can kind of control it, but you can only control it in 10-minute increments. And you have an opportunity to go back as far back as you want to, but you can only do it for 10 minutes. When would you go back to? What would you change and why?
Mm. the night I lost my second CUSA student body president election, I walked out of the what was it? Blackburn. It was in Blackburn, the student center, and just went walking by myself and just staring up at the sky, crying and wondering, like, what am I doing here? And I wish I could have walked beside myself then and just told myself where I am now, and that it's gonna be okay.
So I mean, let's say if you had that opportunity, right, and things were to happen a little bit differently, do you still think that you would be doing what you're doing right now if that would change?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on the passion economy and thinking about these big ideas for a while, but for so long something was missing, and AI was a big part of what was missing. So me going through everything that I've gone through had to happen in one form or another, and the world also had to come into its own. And this is zeitgeist now. This is an idea whose time has really come, and now I'm ready to be a part of that in a way where it couldn't have come sooner. I wouldn't tell myself to buy a Bitcoin and whatever. It would just everything that I've been working on and sometimes seeming like failing forward has brought me here. So I don't think it could have happened faster, but that's what I would do.
I think it's unexpected. I mean, that answer, it's kind of one of those things like, considering that I've done my diligence and I know your background, I was wondering if you would go back and change the events of what happened with that teacher. But for you to kind of go into the day that you lost, it kind of tells me that, obviously you're a very ambitious individual with goals. And with these goals, you're trying to share them. And I want you to kind of talk about your 31 lessons in 31 years. And again, this is kind of like a great segue to talk about that. Failure is a learning opportunity. And I think that was like the subline that you wrote in that blog post. Like, I want you to kind of bring up some of those items and what they mean to you and your business today.
So I that's actually a living blog post. So when I first wrote it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back to this. And some of these are, I have these to 31. So I'm gonna leave some of these on here. One that I'm not sure if it's on there yet, but when you're in a new city, I used to be, of course, because I was drinking a lot, I'd be really big on late checkout and, just basically being in a dark hotel room until, the last possible moment, and then I'd scrape myself onto a plane or something else. But now my travel hack, and it's much more of a outlook on life, is one, realizing that somebody has to turn that room over and I can get my ass out of it. I'm not really doing anything or getting anything else out of there, but I could leave my bags at the front and then go explore the city, find where the locals are eating breakfast or going to church. And those are my favorite walks. Some of my favorite moments traveling are like right before I'm about to head to the airport. And I've been missing out on those for years, thinking I'm hacking the system, when in reality, I'm just shortchanging myself and also just being kind of a crappy guest. So, just off the top of my head, I'll also be honest with you, that was one of my first AI experiments in how well I can generate an article from an outline. So it's it needs to be revisited, and I plan on updating it every year and really thinking about it more. But that was one of the things where, like, I gotta add this on here. So there are some good ones on there, and there are some ones that are like, yeah, it's anecdotal, but good stuff.
Yeah.
But
so, I mean, I think like you've been on a hell of a journey, right? And like we didn't even talk about everything collectively, but we talked about a lot of different things about who you are and why you are so ambitious and so, like detail oriented and why you want to get your goals done. I want you to talk to the listener. And again, coming from some listeners may be in the dark place. That may be the reason why they're listening to this podcast. Some listeners may be more ambitious. That may be a reason why they're listening to this podcast. But I want you to talk to either one of those demographics and give them some words of insight to kind of help them on their journeys when they're hitting those hurdles that are going to come.
One of my favorite books I've been listening to recently is The Greatest Salesman in the World. And at first, like, I've had it on my phone for a while, but I just kind of like wrote it off because listen to a lot of sales books and marketing stuff. But it's very different than I thought it would be. But one of the words of wisdom in this is they're all written on scrolls. One of the scrolls says, "I will persist," and the other part of that is, like, when you are going through anything, good or bad, just remembering that this too shall pass. So in the good times, take it in, because this too shall pass. And in the bad times, when you're literally picking up shit, this too shall pass. So the good times, the bad times, it's all gonna pass, and none of it is that deep. So try and have a little fun, smile. The rest will come easy.
Well, I think you're definitely a source for inspiration for multiple different categories and demographics and different individuals that's just listening to it. I mean, like, this episode has definitely been kind of like an emotional roller coaster. But if somebody wants to reach out to you, they want to get access to your platform, they want to connect to you on LinkedIn, where do you want to send them?
Well, if what we talked about today, as far as like my journey or anything, resonated with you, you just want to reach out and talk about your journey and where you're going on. If this spoke to you, I'm more than happy to grab coffee. If you're struggling with alcohol or any of the things that I talked about, entrepreneurship, I really do love this. My passion is passion. So for that, I would just say, shoot me an email, info@CameronClarkson.com. But for Book Blaster, if you are an author, if you are a publisher, and you are interested in automating your marketing and using AI to take your marketing to the next level, definitely check out Book Blaster. I know we didn't get to talk too much about it today, but we have a special link. We shut down our early adopter membership, but we are reopening it up for SA's audience. So if you're watching this, we have a special link to share with everybody so that you can access Book Blaster, and we also have a special discount code so that you can sign up and join us as we build some really cool software.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to your point about, we didn't have opportunity to talk about it. And I think this is one of the reasons why I created the second podcast. And the second podcast is for books and for authors. So I definitely want to kind of extend that invitation out to you to kind of get you on that, to kind of just that entire episode, we can kind of really dive into the books, because I think both hemispheres, right? This one is more about you, and then the other one is more about the software, and you bring both worlds together. It'll be like a 2-hour session that's going to be like a mastermind coming from your mind and then executing of your software. So I definitely looking forward to interviewing you again on that platform. But I also want to talk about kind of like, like we're kind of running out of time right now, but I have a couple other questions for you. And one of them is, this is going to be interesting for me because we've met, we've spoken, but I couldn't get a fix on who you would want to be in this role. But if you had an opportunity to sit down with someone that you've never met, or someone that you've known or not known, someone from the past or someone from the present, for 24 hours, it could be anyone, who would it be and why?
Right now, it would be Alex Hormozy. And not to fangirl too hard, but like that's just my dude. Like, if you're not familiar, Alex Hormozy is a serial entrepreneur, investor now, but he just launched his second book. And there's, I love a good book. I love a good business book that, it's not too big on mental masturbation. His first book, $100 million Offers, is at the top of my list of books to recommend. And I'm talking, I read a lot of business books, and his is distilled down value. But this dude just did a $5 million book launch. And to be honest, if I could just kick it with him for 24 hours and just goes into an epic book launch, Alex, if you're watching this, I would love to make that happen. So that right off the top of my head, I'm sure there are other people that if I thought about it, they'll be on the list, but just like, that's something that's on the top of my mind. I bought 3 copies of the book, so I want to be able to really talk to him about what goes into an epic, a $5 million book launch. That's not something that happens every day.
No, it definitely doesn't happen every day, and it kind of leads him to, by default, be a New York Times top seller and everything else under the stars of what you want to be as an author. So, 100% strategy driven, I would think.
Definitely. And I honestly, he launched on Kickstarter. I don't know if he plans on or, whatever. He's definitely going to hit some lists. He's like 100%. Once this hits Amazon, like just the word of mouth alone from having that many people have your book is going to go crazy. But I want to help people, it doesn't have to be a $5 million launch, but I want to help people drive that type of excitement where I was like, oh man, I was excited to buy 3 copies of a book, and it came with a hat. That was the only difference between buying 3. I was like, oh, it's not any cheaper. You just get a hat. And I bought that because I actually buy into the quality of the ideas, but there's a passion behind what he does and how he does it, and it's infectious. So call me a believer.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, man. And it's kind of weird too, going to be he's like current too. The longer his beard gets, is the more people are kind of engaged on just staring at the screen and listening to everything he has to say. So I definitely appreciate that answer. With all your accomplishments, I mean, obviously you've had dozens of accomplishments in your life, right? I mean, from football phenom to like everything that we listed off and up until now with the new software Book Blaster, like which one is your most significant achievement, the one that you hold dearest to you today?
I want to touch on football for a second. I would never have called myself a phenom. I went to school with some guys who were phenoms. Michael Floyd went to Notre Dame, played for the Cardinals and some other people, Vikings. That was a phenom. This dude walked on water. When his team, he was captain, one of the captains his senior year. When they went to the state championship, they lost. The following year, talking about dudes, Marcus Benz. He should have gone to Iowa. Like he was D1, like big time quality, but they didn't win the state championship. They got to, I think, the round before, whatever. Our class, we talk about some rinky-dink guys, and like we had our best player, he was also the best player in the country, was our left tackle. His name is Chantrell Henderson. So we didn't have Michael Floyd. We didn't have, skill players, guys, flash. We had a group of guys that we had a lot of fun together. And when I think about my leadership style, what I was good at, why I was elected one of the captains, it was not because I was a good player, a pretty damn good player, but I was a really good leader. And when I think about things that I'm proud of, it was really unfortunate that my high school was complicit in my abuse the way that they were, because we won. And we had a great time doing it. We represented. We are the second other class to win a state championship, but they don't invite me to reunions. They act like I never went to the school because of all the fallout. So, I'm never going to be invited to when they invite the old classmates back to be on the field and stuff. But for a while, I just kind of wrote it off that it was never going to happen. But I actually went back to my reunion, but it was just for the football team. I didn't make it to the game, but it took so much for me to just walk into that place. And a couple of my guys gave me the game ball. They stole from the sideline of the other team, and that meant the world to me. Both the winning, and then 10 years later, finally being able to say, you know what, I deserve to be here, and I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's extremely powerful. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm actually really looking forward to like, and I haven't really said this ever on the podcast, but I mean, obviously, I think this is 1.0 of 2.0, and then again, I think there's so much other things that we can talk about and go into, and obviously talk about the software as well. So I'm telling you right now, like once we get off this call, you need to go ahead and book the book club call so we can kind of just continue it right into it to kind of go into session 2, because there's a lot of things that we didn't uncover yet. But I think for who you are and what you've been through, to your point about being a hell of a leader and an inspiration, I definitely, first of all, I appreciate you being in one of my inner circles, and I love what you stand for. And any listener that's listening right now, they have an opportunity to kind of re-listen to your passion that you delivered on this particular podcast. By all means, you kind of see the quality of the software that you're developing, because you're not going to let anything slide. You're going to build the best of the best, because that's what you believe in.
Yeah, it was something that I took away from the conference down in Atlanta, and maybe we can end on this. But Russell DePina, who is a lead developer at Microsoft and hopefully will be joining our team as an advisor, but he said something that really stuck out to me, and it's that we don't build software. We build products, and we don't serve users, we serve customers. And I think it's very easy, especially when you get into the techy, software world. It's like, users and, conversion rates, and, these are people. And this is at the end of the day, customer service. It's software as a service, yes, but we are here to serve people. And if we take all of the software and the AI and the fancy things out of it, can we deliver? Can we solve people's problem? And that's what I love to do.
Very cool. Very cool. So last but not least, I'd like to close out the show with giving whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of the Uncaged podcast, and I become your guest. The show is now yours. I'm now your guest. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me?
Yes. How do you do this, man? Like, I just went from laughing to crying on a you are amazing at this. How do you do this?
I think it kind of goes back to what you said before about being passionate about it, and then also always looking for, how do I get better at doing what I'm doing? And I'm always looking for the opportunities, like even off air that you don't even know about. Like, I contacted your mom, like we're friends on LinkedIn. I let her know that the show was airing today. Like, I just took that extra step, because I think, like, if you're going to get on a communication level and you want people to know about what you're doing, but who you're doing it for, and I'm going to bring her up in this episode, I wanted her to feel that connection. So if she's looking, or eventually looks later on, then you two can kind of off air have like this additional communication, additional bond based upon this episode. So for me, it's always about going above and beyond what is expected. And again, a podcast is a tool. It's not necessarily something that you just get on and record and hope you get leads. It can actually be an inspiration for people for generations to come.
Yeah, man. I this is hands down. Like, I thought I had done podcast episodes before, but the level of preparedness that you brought to this, and you made it just very easy to talk to you. So thank you. I just really appreciate it. And I'm gonna turn it back over to you, because I can't do. You are good at this, man. This is your calling. So I hats off to you.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, man. And again, I just want to talk about extending that offer to kind of, I really want to kind of get you back on here and talk more to like the book audience, and we can, we could do a live demo. We could just talk about, I had so many different notes that I wanted to talk about the platform. We just unfortunately ran out of time. But again, if you have opportunity, I definitely want you guys to check out this platform and look forward to the follow-up, the 2.0 of this episode, where we're going to be talking 100% about books, strategies, email marketing, targeted audience finders, mock-up generators, and I'm just spitting off some of the key features of his platform. But with that, again, we definitely appreciate you. I appreciate you being here today. And again, for the listeners, this is one of those episodes that, you probably need to take it small bites and analyze it and listen to it more than one time to kind of really get the full impact. And to your point that you said, it's waves, right? You kind of come in, you're happy, you're sad, you're excited, then you may get upset. And again, that's what this media outlet is really about. It's improving on people's lives by telling their stories.
Well, I am grateful. I'm grateful for your time today, and I will definitely be back. Maybe we can do a workshop or something, whatever it is. Let's do it. I'm down to do it.
Perfect.